Imagine receiving an order from a god, not a vague instruction, a specific, detailed order with exact measurements, an order to build underground, in the middle of the mountains, an entire city. A city with 9 streets at the center, 6 in the middle ring, 3 on the outer edge. To shelter exactly 900 humans at the center, 600 in the middle, 300 on the edge, plus seeds of the best plants, plus animals of the best species. All of it stored beneath the earth, hidden from the sky, protected from what was coming. Because what was coming, according to the God, was the end of the world. This story is not from the Bible. It is not about Noah. It is not about the ark. It comes from a sacred text considered by many scholars older than the book of Genesis. A text that came from ancient Persia, from what is today Iran. And the man who received that order was not called Noah. He was called Yima. He was, according to Persian tradition, the first king of humanity. And this is his story, how he built the first underground shelter in human history, 1,000 years before the Western world ever heard of an ark. Before we get to the shelter, you need to understand who Yima was. The tradition that tells his story is called Zoroastrianism. It is a very old religion, founded in Persia, today's Iran, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 years before Christ. Scholars still debate the exact date, but the consensus is that it is one of the oldest organized religions in the world, and its sacred book is called the Avesta. The Avesta is not as well known in the West as the Bible or the Quran, but it had a huge influence on the religions that came after it. And I'll get into that on Thursday. For now, hold on to this idea. We are dealing with a very, very old text, possibly older than parts of the Bible. And within the Avesta, there is a figure who appears at several points. Yima, son of Vivavant, the first king, the first shepherd of humanity. The description of Yima's reign is one of the most beautiful in ancient literature. The text says that under him the earth was a different place. There was no extreme cold or heat. There was no old age. There was no disease. People lived for enormous spans of time, without suffering, without death. It was a golden age, and Yima's reign was so prosperous, according to the text, that humanity grew too fast. The earth became crowded. There was no more room for so many living beings. So Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of Zoroastrianism, ordered Yima to expand the earth. Yima took a sacred instrument, a golden ring and a golden dagger, according to the text, and pushed against the soil. The earth grew by 1/3, and humanity could continue, but the earth grew crowded again and again. Yima expanded it 3 times during his reign as the people grew. It is an extraordinary image, and the text describes it with the calm specificity of a chronicle. But even in a golden age, even in a perfect reign, something was approaching. Something that not even Yima with all his glory could prevent. And it was in that moment that Ahura Mazda called Yima to a meeting and gave him the warning, and then gave him the strangest order a god had ever given a king. The text describes the scene with a striking restraint. There is no fire in the sky, no thunder. Ahura Mazda speaks, and Yima listens. And the message is direct and terrible. Upon the material world, a fatal winter will come. Upon the material world, the Markusha will come. Upon the material world, a thick snow will fall, covering even the highest mountains. And out of that winter, 3 herds will emerge. Some will be destroyed, some will survive, some will escape. Markusha, that's the name the text gives to that winter. It is not an ordinary winter. It is not the cold season that returns every year. It is a cataclysmic winter, long devastating. It will cover the mountains. It will kill most of the living beings on earth. And here the text does something worth paying attention to. It isn't just a vague prophecy. It is a practical instruction. Ahura Mazda tells Yima exactly what to do. Yima make a Vara, the length of a riding ground on every side, and there bring the seeds of sheep, of oxen, of men, of dogs, of birds, and of the red blazing fires. Vara, that is the word the text uses, and I want to explain what it means, because it's the heart of this story. Vara in Avestan, the ancient language of the Avesta, literally means enclosure or refuge. It is an architectural term a specific one for an enclosed, protected structure with the function of shelter. It is not a metaphor. It is a technical word, the way someone says basement or fortress. And modern translators and scholars of the Avesta over the past century have debated what exactly Yima built. The vast majority of translations understand that the Vara was underground. The instructions that follow, with staircases, with internal chambers, with windows that produced their own light, are consistent with a structure built below the earth. They are not consistent with an ark, with a boat, with anything floating. Yima was not meant to escape by water. He was meant to bury himself. And what Ahura Mazda ordered him to build, with the instructions that follow in the text, is so specific that many modern readers stop and reread, because it looks like the blueprint of a real city. The Vendidad, the section of the Avesta that tells this story, describes the building of the Vara with a specificity that has no parallel in other ancient flood texts. It's not build an ark and then nothing more. It is an architectural plan. The text says the Vara was to have 3 concentric rings. The outermost ring, the widest, was to contain 300 shelters for humans. The middle ring, more protected, was to house 600. And the innermost ring, the heart of the Vara, was to contain 900. 3 rings, 300, 600, 900. 1,800 human beings in total, inside a structure that grew deeper and more concentrated as you approach the center. And it wasn't just humans. The text specifies that Yima was to bring the seeds of the best plants, of the best animals, of the best dogs, of the best birds. It was an archive of life, everything that was worth preserving, in a single place beneath the earth. And there were stranger details still. The text speaks of windows that produce their own inner light. Pay attention to that phrase, because it is extraordinarily strange. How could a window, which by definition is an opening to what is outside, produce its own light? Modern translators have wrestled with this for decades. Some theories say it refers to light wells, architectural devices that capture sunlight through openings in the roof and reflect it downward. Other theories, more speculative, suggest some form of illumination the ancient translation could not describe in modern terms. But the consensus among serious scholars is simpler. The text is describing a form of interior lighting in an underground structure. Exactly how Yima lit the Vara without sunlight reaching down there is a technical detail the text does not explain in modern terms. But the description is there. And the text says that inside the Vara, under the protection of that underground city, there was no cold, no heat, no aging, no disease. It was as if the Golden Age was being preserved in a vault, waiting for the world outside to rebuild itself. Yima built it. He brought the seeds, the animals, the humans. He sealed the entrance, and he descended. The Mahakusha came. The winter covered the world. What was outside, for the most part, died. What was inside, the Vara survived. When the winter finally passed, what came out of the Vara repopulated the earth. But the fate of Yima himself, after all that, is one of the most unsettling parts of Persian tradition, because even the man who had saved humanity did not escape his own downfall. Here the Avesta takes a turn that echoes across almost every religious tradition humanity has produced. The man who had been perfect, according to the text, began to fail. Yima reigned for centuries after the Vara over a rebuilt humanity. He was revered, beloved, considered almost divine. And it was exactly that, almost divine, that became the problem. The text says that at a certain point in his reign, Yima began to present himself as a god. He forgot where his authority came from. He believed he was the source of his own glory, not the channel through which the glory flowed down. And here the Avesta uses a technical word, Khvarenah. It is a concept difficult to translate. It means roughly divine glory or divine light. It is the luminous force that surrounds legitimate kings, according to Persian tradition, and that signals that the heavens approve of their reign. Kings with Khvarenah are blessed. Kings without it are just men. The text says that when Yima began to proclaim himself divine, the Khvarenah abandoned him. It flew away from him in the form of a bird 3 times. and all 3 times it went to others. The glory that had made Yima shine simply passed to the next king. Without the Khvarenah, Yima was alone, defenseless, and the enemies he had kept at bay for centuries came. In some versions of the tradition, he was finally defeated and killed by a demon called Ajidahaka, a 3-headed serpent. In other versions, he was sawn in 2 by his own brother. It is a shocking end for the man who had ruled the Golden Age, but the text insists on showing it with the same honesty it had used to show his glory. The message is clear, and it carries across 3,000 years. No king, no matter how great, stands above heaven. Whoever proclaims himself a god is abandoned by heaven. And the man who had saved humanity from extinction died a humiliating death because he forgot at the end that he was not the one who saved. He was just the instrument. But the Vara did not die with Yima. According to tradition, it is still down there beneath the earth, somewhere in the mountains of the east waiting. And this is where the story of Yima gets really unsettling, because the same basic structure appears in other traditions, written by peoples who lived hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers apart from each other. In the Mesopotamian tradition, Utnapishtim receives an order from the god Ea to build a boat and preserve life from a flood. It is the oldest known version of the story, from the Epic of Gilgamesh, predating even the Bible. In the Hindu tradition, Manu receives a warning from the fish Matsya, an avatar of Vishnu, about a flood that is coming. He builds a boat. He saves seeds and living things. In the Bible, Noah receives a direct order from God to build the ark, the story practically every Western child knows. And in the Persian tradition, centuries before Noah was written down in the form we have it today, Yima receives the order from Ahura Mazda, not to build a boat, to build an underground city. The question scholars cannot answer with certainty is why so many ancient peoples, separated by enormous distances, tell essentially the same story. Some argue it is a collective memory, perhaps of a real catastrophe at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose more than 100 meters. Others argue it is an archetype, a narrative structure that surfaces whenever a civilization tries to process the possibility of its own end. We don't know. What we do know is that the Persian version, the story of Yima, has one striking difference from the others. The other traditions speak of water. Yima speaks of earth, of underground shelter, of a city hidden in the floor of the mountains. And here is the detail that left me restless, and that's why this entire week is dedicated to this topic. Because there exist, today, in the real world, underground cities of colossal size, not in Persia, in Turkey, in a place called Cappadocia, cities that could shelter tens of thousands of people, with multiple stories of depth, with ventilation shafts, with light chambers, with everything needed to house an entire community for an extended time. Archaeologists debate who built them and when. The Persian text written thousands of years ago describes, long before archaeology reached that place, exactly that kind of structure. The conceptual coincidence is fascinating, and that's what Sunday's documentary will deal with all the care of separating what is fact, what is tradition, and what is speculation. To not miss Sunday, subscribe and hit the bell. And on Thursday, before the documentary, I'll tell you something that may surprise you. How much of what people call Judeo-Christian religion, angels, heaven and hell, Satan, the Messiah who returns at the end of times, did not originate in Jerusalem. It originated here in Zoroastrianism, centuries earlier. The Magi from the East who visited the baby Jesus were, in the original Greek of the Gospel, priests of this religion. You'll see why. And if you enjoy this kind of story, told carefully, separating fact from tradition and speculation, you can now support the channel through Super Thanks right below the video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps produce the next documentary. That's how between us this channel grows. Tell me in the comments, do you think Yima's Vara was a real construction, lost somewhere in the mountains of Persia, or a powerful metaphor the ancients told to make sense of the world? I read every answer, because the story doesn't end here.